I'd like to thank you all for coming out today. The weather is cooperating with us, which is a good thing for a change. First, a little housekeeping. I'd like to thank the Friends of Samuel's Library, or Fossil. They're at the doors, for short, Fossil for short. They're helping us host this event today, and they can direct you to any open seats or the facilities. Fossil is its own 501c3 charitable nonprofit with its own board of directors and their own accounts. Fossil's mission is to support Samuel's Library. They're kind of our wingman. Their members and volunteers run the Epilogue Bookstore, the annual bake sale, and all funds raised help the library with expenses that are outside of our operating budget, usually the fun stuff. We're very lucky to have their support. My name is Melody Hotek, and I have the privilege of serving as president of the Samuel's Public Library Board of Trustees. This morning, I'll be moderating this public forum. I'd like to note that the press is here and our staff is streaming, and I'd like to thank them for recording these moments in our county's history. The purpose of today's forum is to continue to keep the community informed on matters related to the library and the services we provide. Some of our patrons receive our newsletters, others are on social media, and there are some that prefer to get their information in person. I think we can all agree that it's always best to go straight to the source. Please note that the library maintains a firewall of sorts between us and the many civic groups, such as Save Samuels, Clean Up Samuels, and the New Samuels Pact. They're exercising their First Amendment rights and engaging in civil discourse, and this is a good thing. We are big believers in First Amendment. Having said that, please know that they do not speak for the library. The trustees and staff are here for you today to provide information and to answer your questions to the best of our abilities. A few ground rules, please. Make sure that we all have a civil discussion. We recognize that what is happening can be controversial and divisive. Please just ask one question so that others may have a chance. And we do have paper at the back table on the left here, my left, your right, in case you have additional questions or comments or we run out of time. And if you have suggestions for future forums, please feel free to provide us with your suggestions. So let's do some fact finding, ask your questions, and come together as a community. This is today's agenda. So I'd like to start by introducing Erin Rooney, the library's director. Just about a year ago, Erin began her new role with the library as its director. Before that, she was the adult reference manager. After years of gaining experience in the various departments of the library, she has a Master of Library Science degree, and we are so pleased to have her guiding Samuels. Erin is in touch with all the new trends in the field, and with her love for history, she also makes sure we never forget the past. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Erin.
Thank you all so much. So what I was going to go over today is just do a little recap of our 6-month review. The meeting where we presented that to the Board of Supervisors is online on their website. So if anybody would like to watch the full amount, feel free to look it up there. And then we also have on the wall here, we actually have our slides that have been posted up. So feel free, if you want to get up and take a look at those after we're finished here. I'm not going to go through everything entirely just because we do have a 2-hour limit and we have a lot to go over. But just as a recap, so again, our mission, we are Samuel's Public Library. We bring people, information, and ideas together to enrich lives and build community. And this is our 6-month statistics. The libraries live off of statistics that gives us a good idea of how we're doing providing resources to the community. So some of the things we look at our total amount of visitors between July 2024 and December 2024, and this is looking at this is in comparison to the same period the previous year. So we had a 3% increase with a total of 65,516 visitors. We've had a 4% increase in our total checkouts. That's anything that you can check out here in Samuel's Public Library. We've had a 50% increase in, of course, in our COVID kits, which that is a free resource you can come and get here at the library. Unfortunately, we've had a pretty bad flu season this year, so we've seen an uptick in that. We've had about 956 new patrons added. We get a lot of people who either had just never gotten a library card or they're new to the community, so they can come in, and that's anybody who's come in during that period to get a new card. We've had a significant increase, that's 28% in database usage. We have a ton of different resources people can use with your library card, such as anything from homework help for kids, getting help finding resources for veterans we have one called Transparent Language. If you want to learn a language, they have about 120 different options that you can choose from, and it's all online. It keeps track of your different lessons. We have, of course, our ebook resources through Overdrive and Hoopla, so it's not just print resources that you can check out, as well as many, many others to help with different research needs, and of course, genealogy, which we will talk about our studio here in a little bit later. Some other big numbers we've had, of course, our volunteer hours. We would not be anywhere without our volunteers. We have such an amazing volunteer group, not just with our Friends of the Library organization, but other volunteers that come in to help us with different tasks that then free up staff to do other tasks that help us be, again, a better resource. So that was an uptick of 26%. We had 5,639 hours of volunteer through that 6-month period. And then, of course, other numbers as well. We've had 353 programs with over 10,000 attendees. That's a 3% increase. And then a 4% increase in use of our public meeting rooms. If you haven't had a chance those out, we have of course, the meeting room you're currently in. We have, this actually opens up to another room that can also be booked. And then we have conference rooms in the back that are free for the public to use. And then these are some future programs that we have coming up, but just we had done in the past 6 months. Again, as you can see on here, we've had multiple opportunities to go and do outreach programs. We did things such as go to resource fairs with that DSS had organized. We had done National Night Out in August, which was a blast for staff to do. They love being able to go out in the community and doing those events. We've had multiple different programs that have been really successful. Of course, we had our SammyCon that was back in September, which was, of course, a Harry Potter themed. We had a lot of great local authors that came. Ben Hackey, who's one of our awesome local kids authors, graphic novelist who came, as well as John Gallagher, who did another really popular kids book series. And then we actually have, people don't realize we have two, an animator and a comic book artist in the community who, the Johnsons. Mrs. Johnson is a Emmy-nominated animator and director for The Simpsons, as well as Mr. Johnson is a Hugo Award finalist for his work, and he's done a lot of awesome comics. So we're hoping possibly to get them back for next year. But it was an overall great event. We love being able to do community events like that bring in community organizations, patrons to just show exactly what the library has to offer and also promote literacy. Some other programs as well. We were able to do things like, well, we'll get into the studio in a little bit later. But we had Jonathan Noyales do a Civil War program for us. He's heads the McCormick Institute up at Shenandoah Valley. We love having him come periodically to do local history programs. We've had things such as working with the local group ARC for special needs programs are always incredibly popular here and very well received. And going on to some future programs that I have up here. For March, we have a job fair that is coming up, which is through the Virginia Workforce Development. We're going to have that March 6th. It's from 1 to 4. So if anybody is currently looking for employment, it's an opportunity to come in and see what employers in the area are have open positions. So it's a great opportunity, as well as our very own local author, Connie Marshner, will actually be doing an Irish language class, introductory class here at the library on Saturday, March 22nd. Highly recommend. She is an amazing teacher. We also have her local book, or her book that just got published last year. So again, highly recommend. She's an amazing author. Going into April, if you hadn't had a chance to see our Bigfoot program we did 2 years ago, wonderful performer that we had, who's Mike Filament. He is a Bigfoot, he searches for Bigfoot, and he comes and brings his car, and he does an amazing program, just explain all the different kind of hunts that he's done over the years. So he'll be coming back here to the library on April 8th. So if anybody's interested, feel free to, once it's open, to register on our calendar. We, of course, have our summer reading program coming up. This is for all ages because adults also get to have fun. So it's where you can log in as the amount of books that you read throughout the period. Summer readings usually through June and July. We, of course, have different programs for the theme, but the more you read, the more chances you have to win. It's a great opportunity to help promote lifelong learning and literacy in children. So it's just a little fun way to get them to reading more. This year's theme is Color Our World, so be prepared for a lot of craft and art programs. And then, of course, SammyCon coming up in September. We don't have a date yet, but that'll be coming soon. SammyCon is just another great opportunity as a community event where we, again, as I said for our last one, local authors, local organizations come in and do a lot of fun stuff. We'll have escape rooms, we do scavenger hunts. Everybody gets a chance to dress up, and this year's theme is going to be animation. So a lot of fun stuff we can do with that. But don't want to go off too much longer just because we have a lot going on. So any questions about the last 6 months or any programs that we have coming up? All right, so I'm going to turn it over to our Makerspace and Memory Lab coordinator, Tina. She is a retired U.S. Coast Guard after 22 years of service and received her MSLIS with a concentration in archives management from Simmons University. And this was just January of 2024. She's lived in the area for the past 4 years with her husband, Corey, and 2 Labrador retrievers. We are very lucky to have her.
Thank you. So I have the pleasure today to talk about our Studio 330 space, which is an amazing space and an amazing resource for the local library here. Studio 330 is basically made up of 3 main functions. So we have our memory lab, which is an expanded version of what Samuel's had in the past with more equipment. And we have our makerspace. And we also have an audio video lab, which if you go to the back of the library and you see this kind of cubicle, that is our audio video lab, and you'll hear a little bit more about what we're offering in there a little later. So let me start with just kind of talking about the memory lab. So the memory lab is really a place for you to, go through and dig out all those boxes of photos and DVDs and VHS and 8mm things that we all probably have stored somewhere and bring them back out to life and put them in a modern technology that can be used and shared. So our memory lab offers digitization equipment for 8mm VHS. We can do cassette tapes. We can also do archival scanning. So we have a beautiful archival scanner that can do photos, negatives, slides, and also paper, of course. So we are going to be opening all of those up we have those as a walk-in basis on Thursdays from 12 to 4. So if you just want to come in and get a tour and see what kind of equipment we have, you can absolutely come in on Thursdays 12 to 4 or use one of the pieces of equipment. We also have appointment-based scheduling. So you'll make an appointment with me and we have a 2-hour appointment that you can come and use a piece of the equipment. I'll show you the basics and we'll get you comfortable with the equipment. We can talk about your projects and how to go about those. Our audio video lab is also available for reservation status. So our audio video lab mainly does podcasting or oral histories, any type of audio video recording. That is our studio. So our regular programming, Aaron talked a lot about the library program. We also have a lot of programming coming into the studio. So getting people in and using the space and getting familiar with it and just coming together as a community. Our regular program, we do a Sewing 101 classes, which are extremely popular. We have amazing volunteers that run these programs. She does a Sewing 101 part A and B. So if you've ever just wanted to come in and learn how to sew, we have machines to do that with, and she'll show you the basics, and you can also always make an appointment to come use those machines. She'll also be expanding that to sewing 201 classes, some advanced classes in hemming or pattern making. We have now a new quilting program that has been quite popular, so that is going to be offered as well. And our regular embroidery club meets on Thursday mornings, and they come and do hand stitching, and you don't even have to have supplies or materials because we have a lot of materials in the studio for you to use. And you can ask questions and get help if you've never done it before. The ladies there are amazing, and they can absolutely help you do that. We just started a fiber arts community as well, and that happens on Saturdays from 2 to 4. So crocheting, knitting, any type of fiber arts that you can think of, just come in and work on whatever you might have. We have an amazing amount of yarn that has been donated, so don't bring your own, just come use ours. Speaking of donations, we are now doing our first annual craft swap. So we know there's community members out there and those that have craft supplies and just kind of have a lot of extra materials. We're accepting donations through the month of February. And then in March, we will open that up to kind of an exchange. So March 22nd, if you want to come in and explore new crafts, we probably have some supplies and materials to give to you. So anybody that donates through the month of February of early access, they can come in and swap things out. And then after that, we'll open it up to the community. If we don't get rid of everything, we'll probably keep it open for a little while, and then we'll make sure everything finds an appropriate home. So a little bit about our maker space, some of the equipment we have. We have a Glowforge laser cutter and engraver. That material, we can use any of the Glowforge proof products, which you can do acrylic or small wood or leather. We had a gentleman come in and had 2 wallets, and he wanted to make something different size, so he wanted to make his own wallet, and he purchased a piece of the leather, the proof grade leather, and made his own wallet. And it complete with tiny little holes where he could stitch it together. And speaking of stitching, we also have an industrial sewing machine, a walking foot. So if you need to do heavy material, you can do that as well. A little bit more, let's see, we have a lot of things coming into the year, into next year. So talked about a little bit in March, we have a craft swap. April, we are going to be starting a writing group on Wednesdays, 2 to 4. We, again, have some amazing volunteers facilitating these groups. I just spoke with a Cricut person who does some amazing Cricut crafts, or Cricut vinyl cutters or paper cutters that we have. We have a large format one and a small format one. She's going to be doing some programming around the Cricut. That'll happen in April. And then looking forward into May, end of June, we have what's traditionally known in the archives world as Preservation Week. So we're going to focus a lot on your own personal archives and preservation of your family photos and materials there. We also have one of our volunteers doing a photography 101 class as well. So you can find all of our programming on our event calendars. We list everything out, usually opens up a month before, so keep an eye on all of that. We're also looking into the future because St. Louis Public Library is the repository for the AvTech documents and papers from the EPA Superfund site. We'll be looking at making sure that those are processed and digitized and made accessible for future research. Does anybody have any questions? Yes, ma'am.
Do you have any in your archives, anything about the Conservation Center and the evolution from the Remount Depot in the early 1900s to the present?
I do not know that for sure.
Grave Center and
As
all
far
that.
as archival materials,
Yeah, and
really
it's
limited
like you're
to,
doing with AvTech, something similar that might have been done that.
unfortunately, our archival materials are primarily the AvTech sites. We as a repository don't have the space for a lot of those types of, so, which is why we absolutely love the Heritage Society, because they have a lot
Yeah.
of stuff that we
Yeah.
don't. They're fantastic.
Yep. As a public library, you know, traditionally doesn't really keep archives, but because it's local to Front Royal, we do have the AvTech materials that we will be processing as well. So, any other questions? Okay, great.
Erin always likes to say that libraries are like magic. Things run smoothly, books come and go, programs are announced, and events just seem to happen. The reality is that this is a complex institution with a lot of moving parts and action behind the scenes and an amazing staff. In talking with Scott Jenkins on our board of trustees, he likened it to a special fabric, and I like that analogy. Samuel's Public Library is the fabric of our community that has grown over many, many years, tying together businesses, community organizations, volunteers, and as a partner with the county, we bring you this award-winning gem of a library with a dedicated and caring staff to serve you. Have I mentioned yet that we won Library of the Year 2024? You're going to get sick of me hearing me say that, aren't you? We do the job of running a library quite well, and we're not going anywhere. This concept of Samuel's as the fabric of our community becomes clear as we reflect on our history and the people who helped grow this institution. Louis Moten on our board and Amy Hayes on our staff have been digging into the history of Samuel's Library, along with local author Colleen Snyder. Move slide, Melody. Colleen's book, In Search of Giants, is a fascinating read and a personal research project. Colleen's latest project has been coordinating all of the research, weaving it into a cohesive historical overview of Samuel's Public Library. And with that, I'd like to introduce Colleen.
All right. Switch over here. All right, help. Okay. So what, I push this one to make it.
So this one needs to go forward to that.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay.
Colleen.
Okay. Well, we're going to go into the past. We've just talked a lot about the future and what's going on with the library, but I've been doing a deep dive into the past because when everything started sort of happening with the library recently, I realized I knew a little bit about the library. I think everyone knows, and this is again the mission statement, that Samuel's Public Library has been bringing people, information, and ideas together since 1799. So we sort of know that part of the history, but I don't think that people understand or have heard about all the building blocks. What are the special historical events? And how did they come about? How did these times move forward? And that's what I became really interested in and started to do some research by reading a lot of Warren Sentinels going back. Warren Sentinel's been in existence since the 1800s. And so there's still materials available for that. So I'm going to take you into my Wayback Machine. And we're going to go back to the past and see what are the voices of the past. What do they have to tell us about their vision, their commitment, their goals, and their hopes for the future? And how are we manifesting that now? How does this library we sit in right now, how does it fulfill their vision? So I'm going to focus on the four, what I call sort of the building blocks, okay? I mean, we know that in 1799 that Samuel's was the second library in Virginia. Now, back in those days, they were subscription libraries. That meant that you paid some money, like $1 or something, to be a member of the subscription library. And there was actually more than one of those in Front Royal. Louis Moten did some research on that. And this was a very popular way for people to share books, because if you think about it, they were a lot more valuable back then. And they were kind of like book clubs is what they made me think of a contemporary comparison. And so anyway, but the ones that I focused on and we'll talk about are 1921, the Chester Street Ladies, 1953, which is the Ivy Lodge, the Warren Heritage Society is there now. And that's where we came into being Samuel's Public Library and Dr. Bernard Samuels. The Villa Avenue property, which is now in the community as a community center. And that was Walter Samuels who gave the money for that. And he was the brother of Bernard Samuels. And then, of course, now, since 2009, we've been in this building. So as I said, I did a lot of reading into the Warren Sentinel, and this is one of the quotes that I really enjoyed from 1901. It disseminates knowledge, inspires a taste for reading and gaining information, gives to the town a tone and reputation, draws many from useless, if not vicious habits. So we all have the library to say, have saved us from our vicious habits. Okay, one of the things that was really cool, and again, Lily has done could tell you exactly where the library was on any day, I think, at this point, was how much they had to pick up their books and move. They didn't have, in the early days, a permanent location. And so they were at the Trout Drug Store, which is the smoothie shop next to the DL coffee shop. They were in that building. They were in City Hall, and I read this funny thing about how they were given 15 feet of square of space in the City Hall, and they had to sign an agreement they'd get out in 30 days if they got noticed. So then they had to pick up their books and go somewhere else, right? And so they also were at the Thomas Harness Shop upstairs in the Thomas Harness Shop. I didn't have a picture of that, but this was way too fun of a picture not to put up, of a float for a parade that was going on. That was an advertisement for that place. And so Jane Farrell in 1963, on the 10th anniversary of Ivy Lodge, did a really nice history. And she was able to talk to some people. If you think about it, 63, there are still people alive that would have remembered all this moving. And so she said the biggest problem in the early library days was heat. And they'd be upstairs in some building and probably dying. And then close behind the chill and dampness and the lack of light, dark, narrow stairs. So they were climbing the stairs above the harness shop. Now they did eventually, they were able to be in a more or less permanent situation for a little while in the Steel House, which is no longer there. It would be in the parking lot next to the Beer Museum. That's where the Steel House was. And very early on, RMA played a very important role in developing this library. And they talked about how the students would work off tours when they got a punishment and they were supposed to be walking their tours or whatever. They were very happy to come and help paint and paper the Steel House, and they did it with gusto, which I love that museum. So anyway, so our first stop here is 1921 and what we've been calling the Chester Street Ladies. And there were 4 of them that were really prominent. Their names kept coming up, and no one bigger than Mrs. C.L. Melton. Her maiden name was Gertrude Blackwell, which people have told me that's a big name in local history. And we've been trying to track down a picture of her, which is far harder than you could imagine. But I think this is her. And this is an 1892 picture of her. She was on the faculty, the first faculty at RMA. So right away, we have that connection with RMA. And she married the principal, which I love. The other person we know of is Miss Mattie Brown. And what's great about her is she was the social editor at the Warren Sentinel for years. She knew everybody, and she knew all the gossip. She knew where all the skeletons were buried. She knew who was seeing who. And she was the one that had Mrs. Melton constantly writing. You see her all the time having little snippets about the library. And a lot of finger wagging at people. Mrs. Melton was not afraid to get in your face and say, you know what? You better support this library, especially you men. You just think we're sitting around drinking a lot of tea and being social, but we are building a library. And she was not afraid to tell them. So in 1921, these women, oh, and I forgot Elizabeth Millar. She is of the Millar family, and they owned a big tract of land with RMA going down to Virginia Avenue. And she's actually buried at RMA. I think those of us that have been up there maybe saw that little cemetery that's up there by the middle school. That's the Millar family cemetery, and she's there. So anyway, I love this quote at the bottom, is these were progressive and aggressive ladies who decided to start a project with the library tea at the community house. So I want to be progressive and aggressive. I think that's a great thing to be. Okay, and also there was Mrs. Coleman Ware with the wonderful maiden name of Bertie Beatty. I love that name. So anyway, in 1921, there was the Silver Tea, and this was to build community, get books, promote the library, and more importantly, raise money. do not come to a silver tea back then, or, with that, they're going to ask me for something, whether it's support, library, the books, raising money, because these are the necessary things to show your support and to build a library. Okay, they survived through the Depression and through World War II, which in and of itself was pretty amazing. They continued to have their silver teas. You see these little ads, oh, come to our silver tea. Because it was not just a social gathering, it was a way to build community. World War II, they had, of course, the challenge of World War II and the competition, so to speak, of war bonds. So you see them talking about that, about having to sort of meet that challenge and work together. And they continued to do outreach to the community and promote through those social connections. It was their social connections, knowing each other. And here's another one that I loved about how they thought about selecting books is, this is Mrs. Melton talking here, is never was there a truer saying than many men's many minds when it comes to selecting books for a library. What one thinks is a delightful book, another detests. And we wish to try to please all. So if there is a book that you long to read, tell us. And if possible, we will get it. So bless Mrs. Mountain Heart. She's our sort of godmother of this library, I think. So 1953, now we're coming into kind of living history now. I've been able to talk to a few people that remember Ivy Lodge. And this was made possible by Dr. Bernard Samuels. Now, important thing to know about Dr. Samuels is the Samuels family name is very front row, very entrenched in this history here, is he was a very worldly man. He went to Vienna and Prague to study to be an ophthalmologist. He taught at Cornell University in the medical school there, but he would come home to Front Royal to see his mother and his other siblings. And, you kind of think like, why did he want to donate Ivy Lodge to them? He paid $12,500 for Ivy Lodge, and he had bought a couple other properties in the Chester Street area. And I can't help but think that it was really to think about opening Front Royal to the world. He had been out in the world and he understood how important it was to be out there. And the first thing that they did is they hired a librarian when they went into the Ivy Lodge. And this is a picture of the first librarian. Her name was Ellen Norton. And I find it interesting in her history as to how she also brought fresh ideas into this community. She worked at the New York Public Library during the Depression. She got her library science degree from Johns Hopkins. And I put up reference books there because one of the first things that she did was to make sure that the library got encyclopedias. And everyone was very excited. Some of the lists of the books at the time, and they were so excited, and it made me think about when we first got the internet. This was their equivalent to the internet. These were resource books that, again, would open them up. So what you saw at that time was what you're seeing, building on that building block from before. The new building block, Front Royal, Warren County, Randolph-Macon, businesses, community leaders, and of course the volunteers. From day one, the volunteers, Mrs. Melton, again, were the unsung heroes and heroines of the library. And what was interesting to me is there's been questions about why a 15-member library board? Why do we have that? It goes all the way back to this. When they did their papers for this, their incorporation papers, they wanted the 15-member library board. And this is, again, Jane Farrell talking, because she's saying, this appointment to the library board is a public trust. It's a perfect example of democracy and to promote the American ideal. So that's very early, this 15-member. So next we come to 1980 and the Villa Avenue property. So many more of us remember the Villa Avenue property. I see Cheryl back there nodding her head, and how we used to have to take the tables that were in the central area, turn them on their sides and roll them into the stacks during the children's programs because we didn't have enough space there. And but anyway, the person that made that possible is what I kept calling the mystery man. We've all tried to learn more about Walter Samuels because he left the community. He was living up in Syracuse, and we did come across a letter that says that he was in finance or something, but he didn't come back. He really didn't have a connection. Out of the blue, when he died, he donated $250,000 to have a library. maybe to honor his brother. It was not clear. It was already called Samuel's Public Library. But boy, you cannot find anything out about Walter. He's the mystery man that made possible Villa Avenue. And so the number of things to remember about Villa Avenue was the outreach to the community. This photograph here with the buckets that you're seeing there, I love that. That is Skyline Caverns was donating. They must have had a wishing well or something, or people threw in money. And this is them getting that money out. And you can imagine cleaning up the money to bring it into the library. The far picture is them at the ribbon cutting, and the man standing to the far right there is John Marlowe Motors, right? And then I did pull this picture out with the card catalog. Some of us remember the old card catalog. I see all the people nodding, yeah, the card catalog, right? This beautiful wooden thing with the big drawers, and you'd be going through, and there are handwritten notes and things in there. And this is apparently the kids that were charged with moving that thing, okay, over to Villa Avenue. So some other key points of the Villa Avenue sort of building block that we're talking about is that the library owned that Ivy Lodge. And when they made the decision of, okay, what are we going to do with this $250,000, they were caught off guard, right? I mean, what a wonderful thing to be caught off guard by. What are we going to do? Well, we'll just tear down Ivy Lodge and we'll build it on this land. We have the land. No way. The community was like, no way. Okay, so they had to go and hit the negotiation table pretty hard to figure out what are we going to do? Where are we going to put this library? Once again, RMA came through. There was some negotiations about it. RMA sold it to Samuel's Public Library for $15,000. That's that corner lot that you can see, okay, on Virginia Avenue. But then they turned around and raised $9,000 to offset that. So that's a pretty good deal, right? Okay. And so anyway, so keep that in mind when we talk about the value now of that property. I think we figured out it was over $1 million. The Villa Avenue, over $2 million, okay, is the value of that Villa Avenue corner property that now is the Warren County Community Center. So again, look how wonderful that is for the community. Warren Heritage Society, Community Center. Okay, so the other key point I wanted to point out is once again, they decided when they moved over to Villa Avenue, 15-member board of trustees was the keystone of the organization, of the whole thing. So that's basically, again, 15-member board. I love this. I love this. This was a full-page ad in 1980, working hand in hand for a better public library. So choose the books you want your public library to buy. I'm reading off of this part here. Take an active part in the book selection process. Opens up for you the world of books. And this is a list of the people that are sort of on this full-page ad. And look at the people. It's Riverton Corporation, Aptec Fibers, DuPont, Aruritan, the bank, the Boost, and the Rotary, which I think just gave some big bucks to the library recently. You know, they have been there since the beginning, you know, since they became a Rotary. Here they still are. So then we come to 2009 and the building that we're standing in on Kreiser Road. And you can start to see how these building blocks, you know, how one by one, the volunteer thread that has gone all the way through, the ability to negotiate and to be able to come up with benefits for the community to build on the things that we have. And it's always been a cooperative venture. So what happened was there was land from the school board. That's how we wound up here. Public-private partnerships were developed because they already had the relationships. They built on them. Community leaders, organizations, and of course, our beloved volunteers were there, again, to help, okay? And they were using connections to tap into relationships built over decades. You can see how far back these relationships go. And the result is the facility we have today. So those building blocks that I just laid out for you, you see how they built this building. So in 2011, the county buys Villa Avenue, buys Villa Avenue for $550,000, which includes the debt forgiveness. Now remember, this is 2008. What was going on economically in 2008? We were tanked, right? So not that the money wasn't coming in as quickly as they had hoped. So this was really a way to solve that problem through cooperation and negotiation. And so now when you look at that property, it's worth $2.1 million that we just said. So what a great asset to the community. I strongly encourage you when you leave to look at the wall that's right out here. That's the donor wall, and it's got lists of people that have given, and it's not even all, it's just what's on the donor wall. And I went out and just did kind of a back of the envelope calculation of what you can see self-evidently on that wall, $1.2 million on that donor wall, just on that wall. That's not everything else that has gone on. Oh, and yeah, and these pictures, lower right-hand corner are all the people, all the Board of Supervisors with their shovels getting ready to dig. And then just, you know, all the things we know and love that we've already gone over about this library. Okay, so what is the future? What's the best way to build on that foundation? How does our vision fit with the past values of cooperation, consensus, and collaboration? What's our commitment to expand on those building blocks? What's our goals and hopes for the future of these private, partner, government, citizen partnerships that have been built over decades? What would those Chester Street ladies think of what's going on right now? I also often think of that. But I really wanted to make sure I read this. This was something, again, was in the Warren Sentinel. And it is called Samuel's Library, but each member of the community should more correctly call it my library, for it is our library. And it is one of which we should all be justifiably proud. But we should never get complacent. We should continuously strive to make it better and better, to make it more widely used, to cultivate an increasing interest in our residents of all ages, from preschool to the golden years, to read more and more. So I'd like to take a minute to thank Lewis Moten, Amy Hayes, who also was down the big rabbit hole of Warren Sentinel, and also those echoes of the past, those women that, you know, have helped me with this research project, and I hear them in my ear. Jane Farrell, Rebecca Poe, who also was very much a writer, and especially Gertrude Blackwell Melton and those ladies of Chester Street. So I would mention at this point a new project. I'm turning that sound booth into my Wayback Machine, and you'll see a sign. You'll see a sign there soon. I'm starting a oral history project. I had my first person, Joey Waters, came and talked to me about her memories of Ivy Lodge. And you can contact me at colleensnyder.net or just ask at the library and they'll give you my contact information. And we're doing an Echoes of the Past. What do you remember? Somebody told me they have their library card from Ivy Lodge. I'm like, bring it to me. We will, you know, we'll make a, it's so exciting that you still have that. And she saved it. Why did she save that? You know, she loved it. She loved her library. So thank you.
Who remembers Ivy Lodge?
Sign up for the Wayback Machine.
That's right. You need to talk to Colleen. Who remembers Villa Avenue? Awesome. Okay. Yeah. And I'm sure you have memories too. Find Colleen. She's taking oral histories, and it's important to capture. And these are the threads. These are the threads that make the fabric of our library and the fabric of our community. Okay. Moving on. It's come up a lot of questions about the structure of the library and what is a nonprofit and what is the government role and what is this thing we call a public-private partnership. Normally, I don't like to read off the screen, but as this is a source of a lot of confusion, I think it's important that we touch on a few things. I was able to do some research and found not only some things from the IRS, but from the Aspen Institute publication on nonprofit sector and the government, and trying to clarify this relationship. So what is a public-private partnership? Governments at various levels do rely heavily on nonprofit organizations to deliver publicly financed services, that would be us, and provide significant financial support to those nonprofit organizations in the process. So there's a history of this. It happens all the time. The government's role, they have a legitimate role to play in ensuring the trustworthiness of the nonprofit sector, but this role must be carried out in the most efficient fashion and with the minimum disruption of nonprofit services. Samuel's Public Library has always had a good working relationship with Warren County administrations throughout the years. We provide excellent service and compromise often on financial restraints when necessary. You can see that when we get to the finance section and what our funding has been through the years. And please note that it is always our first choice to work together as partners with the county to the mutual benefit of all the citizens and taxpayers. What Warren County provides is an annual review of Samuel's library budget every January. We submit it in December, and then actually next Tuesday on the 25th, we'll be going in front of the supervisors to present our budget for fiscal year 26. They have the fiscal responsibility for appropriation decision within the overall budget, that they have a tough job. I appreciate the tough job. Thank you for coming. That they have in trying to determine what can the county afford. There's a bi-monthly oversight of the library finances and governance through our supervisor representative. A semi-annual review that we just did, that Aaron talked about, we just did of our measurements and our finances every 6 months. They give us quarterly distributions for that allotment, and they lease this building to us. Thank you for your patience in that. So what is our part in this partnership? First of all, what is our nonprofit? Samuel's Library is a charitable organization under IRS Code 501c3. No stockholders, and all funds go toward running the library. We're not in a money-making business. We're in the business of providing a service, and all funds that we receive go right back into running this library. The partnership with the county allows for maximum leverage of all available resources to save your taxpayer dollars. There are a number of avenues that we do that. One of our favorites is this huge volunteer force that we have here. You are amazing volunteers that come and help us put books away, cover books. Couldn't do it without you. It equates to about $250,000, give or take, a year in savings for taxpayers through the volunteerism. Being a nonprofit, your donations, we can issue their charitable deductions for you, unlike the other donations that you might make to a government entity. But because we're a nonprofit, these are deductions that you can take. So that affords us the ability to do fundraising and for people to make donations. In addition, there's a lot of we can leverage funds because there are entities out there that, like TechSoup, that provide services for reduced costs to nonprofits. So technology that would cost more, we can get through them, or other types of things like that. More generally, nonprofit organizations should not enter into relationships with government that require them to surrender their basic independence or change their fundamental mission. And government should avoid making such requirements a condition of receipt of public support. So what do we provide? We are the experts. We have the expertise in library science. We have 3 or 4 on staff that have their master in library science. We have 2 young people on our staff that are going to college to get their master of library science degree. We have an amazing staff. They have many, many years. We added that up one year, and it was just a phenomenal number of people that have been here all the way over to Villa Avenue. Jessica, Cheryl, and Eileen. Eileen has 23 years or more here with the library. So they have been here, and they stay here, and they do amazing work. We have a governance by a board of trustees who are all volunteers who come from all aspects, all experience, and all districts of the county. We hold bi-monthly meetings to review and provide oversight to this library. We have a comprehensive collection and technology programs and services, furniture and fixtures. We have the opportunity for grants. You just heard from Tina. That Mellon grant was a $500,000 Mellon grant for 5 years. We're in year 1. And looking forward to all the things we're going to do next year, like the AvTech. And hopefully we'll do oral histories with that as well, like Colleen is doing with the history. We can receive additional funding through state and federal aid. The donations and the endowment has been discussed a lot over the years, but we have a policy which you can find on our website. We can skim off 3% annually from our endowment proceeds to help, if we need it, support our operating and costs to run this library. Volunteers I mentioned, and then community partnerships. This is a wonderful thread. This is another piece of the thread, is we have developed over the years. These don't just happen. They've developed over the years. Our relationships with Department of Social Services, the Warren Heritage Society that we're looking into for next year, the police, the fire, throw them out at me. They're Parks and Rec. Parks and Rec has been a great partner with Mikhail and the Children's Department with the Story Walk and the Easter Bunny book read and things like that. And then businesses. We have Play Favorites helped us with our puzzle contests, and Main Street Geek is helping us with SammyCon. It just goes on and on and on. And we cultivate these relationships, and it's critical that this remains a community library and we can bring together all of the businesses and community civic organizations. We thank the Elks for their recent donation for summer reading. It just goes on through nonprofit service. Okay, so there we have that. And that leads us into, I'd like to introduce Celeste, who is our chair of our Committee on Trustees, and she's going to give you a little information about the trustees.
I really thought I was going to trip over that wire coming over here. Good morning still. We've got a few more minutes before noon. Just briefly, again, like Melody, I do not like reading off of slides, but I will read this portion from the IRS form 1023.org. The nonprofit board of directors is the legislative and governing body of a nonprofit organization. Individual board members generally have one vote each and collectively decide the direction that a nonprofit organization should take. Specific roles and responsibilities of the directors of the nonprofit board are set out in the bylaws of the organization, and the board of directors of a nonprofit is bound by the rules set in the bylaws. So as far as our responsibilities go, I see a lot of familiar faces here, so I know that you already heard this spiel 2 months ago when we did this. But just briefly, all of us on the board, all 15 members, are bound by all of the legal responsibilities. We have to follow all the federal, state, local, and FOIA laws. We have to follow our own bylaws and structure. We are responsible for securing the funding, and we all have to sign a conflict of interest form every single year. We are responsible for the fiduciary oversight of the organization. We do have a finance committee. They get much more into the weeds, but at the same time, all of us see the budget every time we have a meeting every other month. We have a policy committee, policy and bylaws. They're the ones who will address any changes that we need made to the bylaws. If we need a new policy set, then they're the ones who meet it, and then they bring it to the full board for a vote. We have 2 different planning committees. One is our strategic planning committee. They're making sure that our 5-year plan is in line with our mission and vision. And our development committee is our fundraising group. So they're the ones that are kind of setting out that far-reaching, looking forward, how are we going to fund things in the future type of plan. And we do have a group that's responsible for the selection and annual review of the library director. And we've been very blessed with Erin. We're very happy with the job that she's doing and very thankful that she's with us. But Erin is the one who's in charge of the day-to-day operations, not us. We don't have the degrees in library science. So we are overseeing and we are supporting, but she's got the day-to-day stuff in her world. As I said, we do have a 15-person committee, or board of trustees, excuse me. And this year we do have one open slot, and we are not required to fill that slot. We are required to have between 9 and 15 people on our board. But we did decide to go ahead and open up the application process this year. So we will be taking applications. The application will actually go up onto the website sometime this coming week, and those applications will be due by March 22nd. We will meet within the following week or so to review any applications that we've gotten, and we'll conduct interviews mostly in that April timeframe. I do want to say, I know we had 10 applications for 3 spots last year, and I know some folks were disappointed that they did not get an interview. But again, that goes back to a couple of things. One is last year, we had very specific things that we were looking for. We knew that we needed another lawyer on the board because the one that we had was very busy, and so we wanted to be able to share the load. We knew that we were going to be losing Matt Hobgood and that we needed somebody with a lot of leadership experience. And we also knew that we needed another finance person because Pete Walker went off the board. So there were slots that were very specific that we were looking to fill. We also have just volunteers on our board, as Melody said, and the ones who were chosen to do the interview this past year, and again, we've decided to move forward with that same process. There will be just a few of us conducting the interviews. We are full-time employed, and so trying to get the time to meet with 10 different people was not entirely feasible. So I can't promise that if we get 10 or 20 applications, we're going to meet with every person. I can't promise that. But we are going to do our best to review each application. We are looking for where do we have holes in our board? Where do the skill sets that this person is bringing forward, where do those meet? Perhaps where do they have connections in the community that we don't? You know, we may have a ton of people on Rotary, but maybe we don't have anybody who's involved in Kiwanis, just as an example. So we look at all of those different things when we're considering people for the board. We do tend to make a decision before the Taste of Books because things get a little crazy the week of Taste for Books. And then after that, we have our May meeting, and that's when we let the rest of the board know, here's who we think out of the applications we got. We give them the resume and the application. They have a chance to review it, and we tell them this is our recommendation. And they have a chance in May to say, okay, yeah, that looks fine with me, or no, I have some concerns on that. The formal vote is not until July at our annual meeting. So I think that might be, and then we have the training in August. But other than that, I think I've got everything. Is there, anybody have any questions? Apparently not. Yes, sir.
Not a question. I can thank you for the opportunity for the meeting. I want to state that the county has about 18 or 19 agencies out there that are nonprofit, and they have probably 19 different departments within the county, and the library is the only one that is scrutinized for spending tax dollars. No one else. No one else. The county during a public meeting elected not to have a special committee to monitor the investment and the spending of the county. Thank you.
Did I miss anything? You got it. And in case you'd like to meet our trustees, that you can go to our website under About Us and Board of Directors, and just about all of our trustees now have their bios and their photo up, so, and feel their email addresses were easy to reach. We're happy to talk. Sometimes people tell me I talk too much. So what's been happening since we last held a forum in December? Some things have gone on, which you will recognize. On December 10th, the county held a public hearing regarding an ordinance for the Warren County Library Board, and they held the vote. Let's talk about a moment in history here. Our fellow citizens and taxpayers absolutely packed that room. Got to be a couple hundred people there. We also know that there were extremely large number of people who were watching from home because they've told us so. They were like, I watched all night. Bless their heart. That included 97 of you. And if you spoke, we want to thank you very much for your comments. You rose to express your views, and it took us over 6 hours. We didn't get out of there till 2 o'clock. Unfortunately, there were calls to table the ordinance or to take it to a referendum, and all of those pleas fell on deaf ears. The vote was 4-1, and it was clear that it was approved despite the overwhelming outcry. Supervisor comments were scripted in advance, including typed notes and PowerPoint slides clearly demonstrating to the public, in our opinion, that the outcome was predetermined. The Warren County Library Board advertised, after that, they advertised for applications and subsequently slipped the candidates onto an agenda with no prior notice to the public and no depriving them of a chance to comment. In January, Samuels filed a lawsuit seeking temporary injunction, and I'm quoting here from that filing. The county created an ordinance adding Chapter 7 to the Warren County Code of Ordinances without proper process. Other points in the filing refer to legal contracts. The local press was unbiased, in my opinion, in covering the details of the suit, and I refer you to either the Northern Virginia Daily or the Royal Examiner for their write-ups. The lawsuit has since been amended and refiled, and a court date is set for May 2nd. On advice of legal counsel, I am not going to take questions on this, and that's all I can discuss. In February, Erin went before the Board of Supervisors along with Michelle, and we did our 6-month presentation. And then at the end of January, the Warren County Library Board began its meetings, and it's in the early stages. They've set up a board. Just this last week, they voted on their bylaws and mission statement. We're hearing from the general public, however, and library patrons that there is still confusion over the purpose and mission of this board. Members of the board have begun reaching out to the library for information. In fact, I was recently in a dialogue with Mr. Belk to come and discuss the library's finances at a future meeting. Regarding this dialogue, first, my responsibility as president of this esteemed board is to the library, the director, and my fellow trustees. We meet bi-monthly, and in the off months, our committees meet. I attend all meetings. Last Wednesday, we had a development committee meeting, and that was my priority. Second, I asked for questions in advance so that I might prepare. Would I need to bring our treasurer or someone from the finance committee? Would I need to bring supporting documents? Would I need to ask our director of operations to join us? These are the things that I'm thinking. Advanced questions are normal practice, usually where numbers are concerned. And finally, I've yet to meet Mr. Belk, and so I choose to give him the benefit of the doubt. I'm sure he did not intend to insinuate that I was in any way avoiding his request. At this point, though, we will discuss with our legal counsel what future interactions will be possible. It is early days, and if and when this Warren County Library Board becomes an agent of the county and part of a public-private partnership, I hope that we can proceed as professionals. Note, the county has every right to form this board. It is if the Board of Supervisors are going to use the board to determine funding, we're willing to work with them. That said, there are still many questions and much confusion. The newly approved bylaws do not clear up the questions surrounding governance. There needs to be a clear delineation of roles to prevent government overreach and protect our independence as a charitable nonprofit. What is going to be our role in this process? So far, are we expected to, and just a question, are we expected to educate the board on how to run a library? This is something that takes years and years of experience, as you can see in the history and in the operations. This is a complex institution. You cannot run a library in a couple of weeks. It just doesn't happen. And answering questions takes time away from our staff, from the actual running of the library. And second guessing the motivations here is frankly exhausting. There are still so many questions. Has the Board of Supervisors ever provided actual numbers regarding the savings that they claim? Have you heard? I have not heard any numbers. Have they ever provided concrete numbers on or budgeted line items for the startup costs if they were to start up a new library? Talking millions, have we ever heard any kind of numbers on starting up a new library? How much is this ultimately going to cost us as taxpayers? I'm a taxpayer. I have 3 family members that also own homes. There's 4 taxpayers in my family. I'd like to know what the costs are going to be. So to that, I will leave that there. Any questions on any of that? You've all been so quiet. You have no questions? Okay. Moving on, we're going to move on to finance. Yikes. Today we are going right to the source and asking Eileen Grady, who's been with the library for over 23 years, to talk numbers. As Director of Operations, Eileen is responsible for, among many other things, maintaining the account books, working with the auditors each year, and reporting to the Board of Trustees those numbers every 2 months for oversight. As I've said in the past, the oversight by our trustees has resulted in high-rated reports from an independent auditor each year. We have checks and balances in place. Accounts are properly managed for the highest return on our investments. We have no debts, no defaults, no scandals, and no lawsuits. With that as a lead-in, I'll turn it over to Eileen.
Say that?
I'm going to try to be brief. We'll see how that works out. The first slide that they put up here is a 6-month, part of the 6-month review where we're showing what Warren County funding is being used for. That's been a request from the Board of Supervisors. They want to understand how we're utilizing the money we get from them. And so as of December 31st, it was all going towards salaries. And that's pretty much. No, is that right? Oh, this is the expenses, yeah. Here's the breakdown. Salaries are 356. Taxes and benefits, that's more salary stuff. Office equipment, office expenses, anything highlighted in the green is how we're spending the county's money. So there you go. So we thought this was important because we continue to hear questions about why $1 million and how did it get that high? And when in 2006 or 8, you were at 430,000. And so I thought it was important to talk to that a little bit. In 2008, we weren't in this building. we were in the Villa Avenue building, which had roughly 11,000 square feet. This building has 27,500 plus square feet. So it was a big jump, it required more staff, utilities, everything grew in expense. So we requested funding that would reflect that. And in 2010, the county jumped to 600,000 to help us. 2010 would have begun July 1, 2009. So we moved in here in June, so that timing was great. And at that point in time, you can see we were also being funded by the town, and the town jumped theirs up for us. So it was still tight. We had to close on Sundays because we just couldn't stretch that money across the size of this building. But we worked together to come to that solution. And some people weren't happy about the closures on Sunday, but it was our shortest day. We were only open 4 hours on Sundays. And people, I think for the most part, got used to it. And so then we turned our attention, because we knew times were tough, we turned our attention to building the strongest volunteer force we possibly could. And that has been more than successful, in large part due to Cheryl Harrison back there. Cheryl is the one that coordinates all our volunteers, and she does an amazing job. And we couldn't do what we do without our volunteers. If you equate our volunteers to cash, as of today, every fiscal year at this point, they're at least $250,000 for us. It's just remarkable. And they're terrific people who give freely, who love the library, and we love them. So then we continued to get a little bit more and a little bit more. And then 2013 and 14, you see it jumping again. And that's because the county and the town negotiated a memorandum of understanding where the town would phase out their funding and the county would assume full responsibility for the funding. And there was a reason they did it. They swapped something, whatever they did, it was their prerogative, and that's all fine. But it brought the funding. By the time the town was completely out of the picture, we're at 875. And when we got to 2014, the county administrator knew he couldn't give us what he needed to give us. And so we just had a handshake deal. They'd help us with the building any way they could. They'd help us wherever they could to help us cut costs. And so we worked together and we persevered, and the county persevered, and we moved forward. And when funding was available, they'd give us a little bit more and a little bit more. And you can see it doesn't grow beyond when the town pops out. It doesn't grow that much every year. You've got cost of living increases, you've got inflation, all that. And then we get to 2023, and that's the number we've been at since then. So that's a brief explanation of how we got there. I don't think there's another slide here. No. So now I'm going to switch to something else. This should be interesting.
I know.
Yeah, okay, that's it. That's what we want. So this is our 2026 budget, and you're reading a lot about it and hearing all about it. And we want to explain a little bit about where we are in
putting this budget together. In preparing the budget, we decided to take the approach that it was time to lay it bare and to show the county what it costs to run the library, including building and maintenance, and pull out all the funding we've been dumping into it and show them the number. If you look at 2025's column, you'll see up here, we put $82,800 in of fundraised money to get down to a balanced budget. That also included $32,500 in additional donated funds. So we're over $100,000 funding the operating budget of the library. And so this year we decided we put $38,000 in the 2026, and that is, I'll just, rather than flip through the pages up here, and there are a bunch of these on that back table if you want one to really study on. The $38,000 is our 3% pull from our endowment fund, plus we automatically put $8,000 every year out of our reserve account into the budget to cover some development expenses and some community outreach expenses, because we think those are important things that we need to maintain. So what are the major increases that we're dealing with? You heard some crazy numbers bannered around about we were asking for an additional $266,000 in salaries. Well, that's just not the case. I am going to advance it so you can see that. Page 3. Just take me down or up or whatever. Yeah. Go up. There. So you can see in 2025, salaries were at $786,400, and they're going to $810 and change. It is a 3% COLA increase, and that's what it's been for years. Staff hasn't gotten any kind of inflation, merit, whatever. It's just a basic 3% trying to maintain some level of fairness. This library is nothing without people here. It's an amazing team, and I believe most of you realize that. So overall, in the salary block, which includes taxes and benefits and all, it comes to a 2.7% increase over last year. So if you can arrow down, then this is the expenses projected for our books, programming, internet, databases, magazines, subscriptions. We're down 0.1%. I mean, we're not being wild spenders here. Keep going, please. And then here's where we take a hit. We have to account for what we're going to have to face in the coming year on maintaining the building. The building is now 16 years old. Things are starting to happen. You all own homes, you know what that's like. So we have added $54,000 to the budget for that. Another area that we have never put in the numbers of the request is technology replacement, and that's a little further down. You'll see that most of these are not major increases in the blocks. Keep going if you don't mind, Celeste. Right here. See, this block is even, library technology's down because we're able to utilize the Mellon grant to maintain the computer lab, laptops. Yes, sir.
It's appropriate if I ask a question.
Certainly.
It's not specifically, but generically. So the library has had a certain amount of cost increases because of a 3% increase in cost of living on salaries. How have other organizations within the Board of Supervisors purview, have they had cost of living increases, or has everybody held back? Has there been no increase in any other organization? That would be my question. I mean, since they're focusing on the library as saving money, have other organizations within that, I don't know, garbage, whatever the different departments are, do we know that? Does anybody know that?
Well, we have two supervisors here today. I don't know if they're prepared to speak to that or not.
I'd just be curious about that. I mean, it seems to me, if we need to save money, then we need to save it across the board, I suggest, as opposed to just in one organization.
We haven't approved a budget yet. We're still in the process of everyone coming in and showing us their budget request. I would assume that every department has included that 3%. But we have not voted on the budget, so this is, she's presenting this to you, that's what they present to us.
Right.
And then we look at that and we whittle it down to meet what we're able to afford to do. So I'm going to say I assume that. John, did you want to say anything?
Just briefly, the county departments, all the departments typically get a uniform COLA or cost of living adjustment each year. It's in the same neighborhood, 3%. With all the partner agencies, we are always looking for ways, and we do ask a lot of questions. They all give different time. We find ways to save money. Certainly last year, which is my first year going through this, a number of agencies got less than they wanted, some less than the year prior. And the challenge is that salaries are the biggest part of the county's expense, and if that goes up 3% every year, taxes need to match that, and it's really hard on people right now with taxes, and people's assessments have gone up recently, and we're very earful about that. We haven't set the rate yet, so hopefully we set the rate lower and it compensates for that. But even a 1 or 2% increase can be very challenging for a lot of people, and we have to keep that in mind. And so we are looking for ways to find efficiencies and within the county itself, especially because that's where the bulk of the money is. So last year, a lot of departments were level funded or no growth. Some were actually cut. The Board of Supervisors, we get a small stipend, I would call it, and we did not increase ourselves by 3%. We left that flat. So those are just some examples.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Question.
Sure.
I just wanted to find out if we do have two supervisors here. I wonder if you could introduce yourselves, because
I'd be happy to. We have Cheryl Colors here from South River. And John Stanmeyer from the Shenandoah District. And we are very grateful you came today. So that's a quick run through of the FY26 budget. And like they said, we will be presenting it on Tuesday night to the full Board of Supervisors. And as we always have said and will continue to do, we are more than happy. We welcome the ability to sit down at the table and work together to find what the number needs to be for them and for us. Marisol, you had a question? Yeah, there you go.
What's the date that the budget actually gets approved? When does the library hear whether they?
It can vary. I think it was late June last year, wasn't it?
I think our target date is May.
Yeah, and I think it was in June. There were some delays.
Yeah.
So forth.
I think normally you try to do it on your deadline for your schools.
Well, and I think last year, the state legislature was a bit late.
That's exactly right.
We were waiting because we didn't want to approve our budget and then have those wonderful unfunded mandates that they always throw out. And if we approve our budget before we get those, then there's the struggle of, we had those quite a few, 2 or 3 years ago, maybe a little more, where we approved our budget and then the state looked at the number of body worn cameras that are law enforcement, and they required us to hire another Commonwealth's attorney to review those, and that was an unfunded mandate. So we had to figure out in our budget now where we're going to fund that position.
Gotta love unfunded mandates. So that's a quick overview of 2026s, and we'll be in more detail, I'm sure, on Tuesday night. Did we put that other one up, sure?
Yes.
Jessica?
It's the Word document.
Oh, it was Word, I'm sorry. You see, there it is. Just so you know, there are 2 documents that are involved in the budget process. This is the Warren County document, and it's a much more generic set of numbers, but it's pages of narrative that Aaron puts out with statistics and all of that, that supports the very dry request we make. So this and this will be available on our website today. Just going to load them up, and you go to I might not see it, just.
Go to Chrome.
And then Chrome. Go to Edge. Yeah. Whoops. Just give me them. Okay. So you're going to go to our webpage, and you're going to go to About, Financial Information. Click it, and she's going to put it right at the top. So anyone that wants to sit and study on it will have the ability to do so. Are there any other questions? I'm sorry.
Have the board supervisors always have access to your numbers, to where their money goes?
That is a new request that was made, and now we are doing our best
You've
to.
always put like their financials on the website.
Oh, yeah.
So they can like, even if they call and say, hey, what do you guys do?
Well, yeah, but I think the difference now is this board is interested in how their money is being spent, what line items their money is covering. They have every right to ask that question. We're happy to provide that.
And you have.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, we're gonna be doing that on a regular basis for them. Any other questions about the budget? Yeah.
Yeah, Canva.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay. We're down to the end, folks. This is where youth takes over, right here. Okay. I can just talk about the fun stuff now. Near and dear to my heart. Right now, we're in the middle of Love Your Library Month, and we received a $6,500 matching grant. So if you haven't made your donation, I'm going to ask you to go make a donation. Every dollar, every $5, every $10 is matched, and we're trying to hit that goal. So there are sheets in the back over there, the QR codes if anybody's that tech savvy. Otherwise, the ladies at the desk will be happy to take your check. And that's going on now. So, or your credit card. If you're a swiper, Day of Giving is actually February 27th. That happens across a lot of nonprofits. It's a big day for Day of Giving. And we participate in that too. In March, we're holding Ladies of the Library. So you listen to Colleen's wonderful history. We're bringing back the ladies. So
Just really quickly, you accept matching corporate contributions as well, right? So a
we
lot
do.
of companies will offer matching donations, fill out the form.
We do. And we need to do a better job of that. Actually, Fossil has started on that within their organization, and we can do a better job of that. We aren't getting reaching enough corporate people, to be honest. So, yeah, but of course we can accept them and welcome them. Yeah, Adele?
Another way that you can help individuals, if you're you can have to withdraw from your IRA that you do a qualified charitable distribution. It helps immensely in your taxes, so.
Yeah. And Adele, this is her second year that she's done a birthday fundraising event and donated it to the library, so we thank you. Amazing supporters. So in March, we're going to have by invitation only, the ladies of the library who have been donors. We're doing a special invitation. So we're bringing back the ladies. The ladies have helped make this library through the years, and we need your support again, and we're going to have a silver tea. So if you'd like more information on how to be part of that, you can come and ask me, but right now it's a donation-based invitation. And then we have a Taste for Books, everybody's favorite, on April 26th, a Taste for Books, and there's a save the date card on the back table. So use your imagination. Tickets are $50 or buy 4, get 1 free. It's going to be movie magic. So this is your chance to walk the red carpet. Yes, we're having a red carpet. There'll be paparazzi here to take your picture. And we have a 18-piece swing band that's going to be performing in this section. And so bring your dancing shoes because there'll be a dance floor. And we're looking forward to that. So it'll be a swing band. They're called Yesterday Swing Orchestra. And I'm very excited about that. So that's going to be very exciting. And then we'll have the set and all kinds of movie related. You know how we go all out for these events. So I haven't figured out what I'm going to be yet, but it's always the best party in town and just so much fun. You get a chance to dress up and come and have drinks and food and meet. And again, this is a community event because the table hosts are all businesses from the community that provide the food for you. And it's their way of giving back and helping support the library, sponsors. It's just the community comes together to put on this great big party, and we have a blast. So Hot Shots does your pictures. Can't forget them. Come get a free picture and, as a keepsake for the evening. So there's just so much silent auction goes on, and with some really unique, I think we have airline tickets this year and a train ride in West Virginia, and they're just starting to come in. So there's all kinds of fun things to bid on and activities that night, and we can't wait. And we're busy with the background actions in the back, trying to call people and get people. And if you'd like to be a sponsor, I can ask you for that too. Or if you have a silent auction item, I'm shameless. You tell them.
So we're not sure if it's going to be in the silent auction yet, but one of the cool things we just discovered that had just been sitting in someone's office in the library for years was a original Star Wars script that was given to us back in the 70s. This was before the first movie actually came out. I guess we were doing some sort of celebrity auction. It didn't actually get used. There was a little bit of water damage on it, but it has the official letter with it and a signed photo of the president of, I guess it was it 20th Century Fox? Studio, yeah.
One of the studios.
One of the studios. I'm a Star Wars fan. It's bad that I don't know that. But yeah, we were cleaning up and I think Eileen found it in her office. And of course, I opened up the first page and I was like, oh my. So if it's not going to be in the silent auction, you'll definitely be able to get to see it the day of. So it's just very, very exciting little piece of history that we had that we were able to show. Yeah.
All right. And did we have any questions? We're opened up to questions now. In the back there.
I don't know if this is on topic, but I know, over the last few years, there's been a lot of bad mouthing of the American Library Association. And I was wondering if any staff was going to be able to go to the meeting this year in Philadelphia.
I don't know that we have plans for that.
We don't have any plans as of right now, but there's great career development opportunities. We do have some money in the Mellon Grant for things like that. So again, we don't have anything set yet, but we do look at that. There's also the Virginia Library Association does an annual conference as well. So we're always looking at opportunities for staff to get more training, especially with our studio, because that is makerspaces especially are big topics right now in the library world. So we're always looking for new ways to bring better resources. So yeah.
Anybody else? I do have a couple questions that people have asked us that I could share with you. People are concerned about our future. And I'll just do the one. They've asked, if I make a donation to Samuel's Library, will it stay with the library? And the answer to that is yes, absolutely. Any funds that come to the library go into our accounts. Nobody can touch them. They're our bank accounts. So rest assured that your donations will stay here and be used for this library. And we want to thank everyone for their donations. They help see us through this challenge, and your generosity allows us to carry on with all these programs and services that are outside of the operating budget that the county gives us. Many of you have earmarked your donations, some for maintenance, some for legal expenses, some for books, and some just say use it where you need it. So we thank you and all of your friends and relatives, because we've been getting donations from all across the country. So you've been spreading the word, and we know that we're up to 15, 16 states now in Canada. So we know that between the news in the paper and your sharing it with your family and friends, that we're getting donations from everywhere. We want you to know that we see you, and we know that you're watching what's happening here at the library and supporting the staff. The staff receives notes almost daily of, hang in there, we support you, and the trustees. And we continue to ensure that Samuel's Library will remain the fabric of our community for generations to come. And with that, I thank you. Have a great day.